Good evening, everybody. Sorry for the delay there. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties. As you can see, Hammer is not with me at the moment. He's having internet issues, which happens sometimes. If you guys have been watching over the last month, he's had some internet issues, so he's dealing with those again. So we're trying to work through that. If he's able to join, I will pop him in here, and hopefully he is. He's working on his laptop and trying to figure out a few things that are going on with that. So I will be going solo dolo until then, but appreciate you guys joining us. This is our first show back. We've been on a 2-week hiatus for the Christmas holiday and New Year's Eve as well. So hope you guys had a wonderful holiday season. We certainly did. We were in Virginia, in Maryland, visiting some family, and got to spend some good quality time with them. So it's good to be back, though. We've got a lot to discuss tonight. So much football has been played since we last talked. And we've got some really big games coming up here this week on Thursday and on Friday with the first iteration of the college football playoff semifinals. So really looking forward to that. Before we get into it, as always, please go ahead and sign up for our biscuitsandsec.com newsletter. You can see there, biscuitsandsec.com/newsletter. You can sign up for the Morning Biscuits newsletter, which is written by myself, Bossman, on Mondays, and on Fridays, Hammer writes it. Everything SEC going on. We'll start to get into basketball season as we transition away from football season. But still, again, lots of football to be talked about. So we will get into that as well over the next couple of weeks. Always talking about transfer portal, always talking about what's going on with NIL, the new things coming down the pipeline with the NCAA, SEC baseball season coming up as well. So be sure to subscribe to that. It's free. So it's some of the best content we put out. Everybody that we talk to who, checks out our stuff, they really love the newsletter. So we hope that you guys will check that out, and be sure as well to check us out on social media at Biscuits and SEC across all platforms. We post memes and all sorts of fun stuff there, and comment on the goings on of the day in college football and around the SEC. So hope you'll follow us along there. This is our 14th show, though, so it's been a fun season doing this, and we're thankful that you guys are tuning in, and we'll get right into it. Hammer is trying to join and may be able to. We'll see. It's going to be finicky all night. I'll show you guys what I'm looking at here. This is Hammer's internet issues right now. So if he's able to join and get those figured out, we will get him in here. But all right, so first topic of the night is rounds 1 and 2 from the college football playoff. And apologies, it's kind of blocking me here, but that was because it was made for this screen. But going solo dolo, the screen doesn't fit as well, but all good. Recap then of college football playoff rounds 1 and 2, since we didn't really get to talk about that. We were supposed to have a recorded show as well that we were going to put out right before Christmas or right after Christmas. Just talking about, what happened with the first couple rounds of the college football playoff, as well as with the SEC bowls. But unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties with that one as well, and it got deleted on accident. So happens, all good. But we can talk a little bit about that here tonight, and I'll just touch on them. Obviously you guys have seen what has happened in those games. You guys all watched the games, but did just want to give a couple just quick takes here and quick thoughts on the first couple rounds of the college football playoffs. So here's the scores from round 1. Notre Dame, that looks closer than it was. Anybody who watched that game knows that Indiana absolutely got worked, and Notre Dame controlled that game from really start to finish. Notre Dame scored a couple touchdowns in the fourth quarter that made it seem a little bit closer than it really was, but it was 27-3 late into that game. Penn State put the screws to SMU, a couple pick sixes in the first half from Kevin Jennings, the SMU quarterback. Penn State rolled in that one. It was an awesome scene in Happy Valley with the whiteout. And then Texas took down Clemson. That was actually the closest game. For those of you who watched it know, Texas looked good. Their offense looked pretty good at times. And their defense, though, was the story of the day, as they stopped Clemson on 2 fourth downs, one at 4th and 1 at the goal line, and another time at 4th and 6 inside the red zone of Texas. So Texas gets a good win though there in Austin, and then the kind of the shocker of the first round was Ohio State absolutely putting the beat down on Tennessee. And, not a ton of people expected it to go that way. They expected it to be a fairly close game, especially after the way that, we all saw Michigan go down to a Columbus and beat Ohio State there at the end of the year, and all the talk that was swirling around Ryan Day. And, can he get the job done? He's lost all these times to Michigan. If he doesn't win the national championship, then, man, is he gone at Ohio State? And he comes out there and beats the hell out of Tennessee. That was extremely impressive. And then quickly going into the second round here, in the quarterfinals, you had Ohio State then go and beat Oregon 41-21, just absolutely destroyed them. That score looks closer than it actually was. I mean, this game was over at halftime. So to talk a little bit about that game, and then, looking ahead briefly, Ohio State, I definitely didn't. I definitely did not think that Ohio State was going to look like that in those first two rounds. I thought that, frankly, I picked Tennessee to win. I thought Tennessee was going to beat them. And Nico Iamaleava, I'm really interested to see where his development goes, just to touch on that real quick, because for Tennessee fans, and if you guys are in the chat, please let me know kind of what you're thinking about Nico here. But I know he's young, right? We saw him do so well last year in that bowl game against Iowa. We saw a couple flashes here early in the year. Gets a big win over Alabama, right? So it's not all bad things. You get into the college football playoff. Obviously, that's huge. But Tennessee fans were kind of freaking out about it after the game, after getting absolutely waxed by Ohio State. And, I am a little bit worried about Nico and his development. It seems like he's just not reading defenses. He's one read, and then he has difficulty after that first read. He doesn't do checkdowns very well. Doesn't seem like Josh Heupel fully trusts him in this offense still, all the way through this year. You got players like Squirrel White hopping in the transfer portal. He's a 4-star transfer. You guys can tell me if something would happen with Squirrel White behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. But I was a little surprised to see, Squirrel White jump in the portal and then end up leaving Tennessee. Kind of makes me wonder if Nico, they're looking at his development thinking, hey, I need to go elsewhere to get a quarterback who's going to be throwing me the ball and getting it to me consistently. And I'm not sure this guy can do that. You also saw the 5-star wide receiver, I'm blanking on his name at the moment, enter the portal, eventually ends up coming back to Tennessee. So maybe that was just about money and, getting a new deal or what have you, or testing the waters in the portal. But I am interested to see where that goes here to the future. But to get back to round 2 here, let's see. Got to find my graphic. There it is. Penn State beats Boise State. That game actually was closer than the score appears. Boise State had a couple of chances there in the second half to really keep it a close game, and eventually Penn State's defense just kind of overwhelmed them. And as people thought, Penn State was the more physical team, and did what they needed to do in order to get that win. Texas, that was the big surprise, right? It was obviously surprising that Georgia loses to Notre Dame, but Texas beating Arizona State 39-31, but going to 2 OTs and having that game seemingly in hand early on, and then Arizona State storms back in the second half to tie the game and make it really the most entertaining game of the college football playoff thus far. But Texas escapes, and then Notre Dame and Georgia. Gunnar Stockton, he played decent. Really, it came down to drops, right? Georgia had so many drops in this game, and Notre Dame's defense is as advertised. They're a dang good defense, and I think they've got a really good shot here coming up in the semifinals when they take on Penn State. Just for the fact that defense is so dang good. I think it probably is a different game if you've got Carson Beck. I just think Carson Beck brings a different element to that offense. He's a much better passer, to this point, right, than Gunnar Stockton. I think that it could be said that Gunnar Stockton maybe a good passer going into next year, but he just doesn't have the experience, and Carson Beck does. And we've seen him carve up defenses that are very good in the past, though he's had his struggles this year, as we all know. But anyway, rounds 1 and 2, I thought were overall fantastic. I know there was a lot of talk, I'll touch on this quickly, after round 1, that the committee got everything wrong, right? And, hey, we need to look at strength of schedule over some of these other metrics, right? I'm of the opinion that we should switch up the rankings. Either we re-rank after the first round, or, in my opinion, probably do away with the conference championship gets you, the potential for the automatic bye, right? Boise State shouldn't have been a 3 seed. I don't think, and look, here we are. Penn State is in the semifinals, and Oregon is not. Oregon's the number 1 overall seed, and they don't get to the semifinals or have the easiest road, right? Instead, they have to play Ohio State or Tennessee in the second round, and they get blown out by Ohio State. Now, you could say, hey, games played on the field, and that's just what happened. Well, I get that, but at the same time, you have Penn State, who gets SMU in the first round, and then in the second round, they get Boise State. And not to say those are bad teams. Boise State gave Penn State a good game early on, but at the end of the day, Oregon should have had that easiest road. And I do think that the seeding should change going forward. But to say some of these folks, and Kirk Herbstreit was one, a lot of SEC folks, Jordan Rogers and others, Paul Feinbaum, were all on the train saying that, hey, strength of schedule should matter. It should hold a lot of weight. I agree with them to a certain degree. I don't necessarily think that, and I think this was borne out in the weeks after, right? We saw the only one that had a claim after everybody was yelling, okay, hey, Alabama should have been in. I'll touch on this in a minute when we get to the SEC bowl season, but Alabama got beat by Michigan. Freaking Michigan. Like, Michigan has some good players. They're not a horrible team, right? They made a bowl. They beat Ohio State. But this Michigan team should not be beating Alabama, an Alabama team that mostly was at full strength. A Jalen Milroe, who was early in the season considered a Heisman favorite. Didn't work out for Jalen Milroe really this year, and that's unfortunate. But I could touch on that again a little bit in the bowl season, in the SEC bowl season piece that I get to here in a second. But Alabama had no claim after that, and it got really quiet after they lost to Michigan. The only one that really kept talking, South Carolina loses to Illinois. The only one that really kept talking was Lane Kiffin. And he made sure, even after that game, if you guys watched it, that he wanted it to be known that, hey, check out what we did. We beat Duke, and we should have been in. And I disagree with him. Now, that Duke team was completely hapless. And look, most of the time I'm an SEC homer. We're Biscuits and SEC. We love the SEC. We love covering it. So most of the time I'm going to be on the side of the SEC when it comes to just about any argument. But I'm also a realist, and I'm going to tell it like it is. I'm going to say exactly what I think. And in this one, I actually think at the end of the day, committee probably got it right. Hey, look, there was a couple teams, like, should Alabama maybe be in it over SMU? Yeah, maybe. But hey, you had your chances. We've talked about this, previous weeks as well. Should have beaten Vanderbilt. Should have beaten 6-6 Oklahoma. By the way, the Oklahoma team lost to Navy. So it's played on the field. You had your chances and you didn't get it done. And South Carolina, I thought, was the only one that really had something to say about potentially being in. I know they lost to Ole Miss. They got worked by them early in the season, 27-3. But they had that loss to LSU early in the season that, frankly, was stolen by them by the SEC refs. SEC officiating, we could go on for days about how terrible it's been. And it's not just in the SEC. It's kind of across the board in NCAA football, which is really unfortunate, something that I think needs to be fixed going forward. And I think there's a few ways that can be done, but we can save that for the offseason. But South Carolina, I thought, was the only team that really had a serious argument to get into the playoff. And lo and behold, they go and lose to Illinois. So for all the crying that was done about how bad the committee did and, oh, they did terrible, and no, they should have let Alabama in, they should have let Ole Miss in, all this stuff. At the end of the day, I mean, look at this. We had some great games, awesome games. And it was a celebration of college football. How awesome was it to have these games, especially here in the first round, right? I mean, sure, all of these were covers. And, the only game that was really worth a darn to watch was Texas and Clemson in Austin. The game ended up looking like a blowout, but again, for anyone who watched it, it was a really close game. Cade Klubnik played a hell of a game, kept Clemson in it, and was able to do a little bit of damage to that Texas defense. Could have done more if they were able to convert some fourth downs. But hey, these games on campuses were awesome. Absolutely loved them, even though some of these were blowouts. And in the second round, we had great games. Penn State, Boise State. Great game. Boise State gave them a hell of a fight. Ohio State, Oregon, not so much. But in it, most of the time, that's going to be a great game. Texas, Arizona State. Everyone was saying before this game, that Texas just has way too much. They're too talented, blah, blah, blah. But, we've seen it all season from Texas. Their offense just kind of goes blank a little bit. They have problems. And I think it was like 2.5 or 3 quarters where Texas was scoreless. People kind of should have seen this coming, in my opinion. I thought Texas was definitely going to be more physical than Arizona State at the end of the day. They were, but Arizona State, they were not bullied. I mean, Texas bullied Texas A&M more than they bullied Arizona State. Cam Scatabo ran all over those guys. He did an incredible job there for Arizona State, and so did Sam Leavitt. There was a couple drop balls for him as well, but these games were awesome. I really, really enjoyed watching it, and for all the crying that was out there in the media, it was awesome to watch. I love the 12-team playoff, and I'm all for it. So it makes me super, super excited that this is. Y'all want to see? This is from Hammer. Glad Hammer's not here. That's Hank. Bossman is making great points. So Hammer from somewhere out there in internet land, he's listening. I have no idea what the problem with his internet is that he can't get on. Here he is again, still buffering. So anyway, so great first and second round. Really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun with it. And this next round here, the semifinals, I think we've got some really fantastic games. So, but before we get to that, I do quickly want to say we are looking for sponsors. So if you're in the SEC footprint, if you enjoy what Biscuits and SEC is throwing down, if you enjoy Biscuits and SEC Live, we would love to have you either sponsor the newsletter or sponsor Biscuits and SEC Live for one of our shows. So you can reach out to us. Contact at biscuitsandsec.com. You're always welcome to DM us on social media channels, on our social media platforms at Biscuits and SEC, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We would love to work with you guys. So please do. We love SEC food. We love representing the SEC footprint, and we love to support local businesses around the SEC footprint. So please do reach out if you are interested in working with us. Now let's get to SEC bowl season. So, it was kind of a mixed bag here. It's hard with so much going on in the transfer portal. And I mean, Arkansas got hit super hard in the transfer portal. Texas A&M was hit super hard in the transfer portal. Alabama's been hit very hard in the transfer portal. So, to know kind of what you have going into these bowl games, it's tough. It's always a moving target. And even us who, look at this every single day, we're having a little bit of trouble keeping up with everybody who's going to end up playing in these bowl games. But overall, the SEC was 6-4 in non-college football playoff bowl games. It was kind of interesting to see that some of the ones that you didn't expect to actually uphold the SEC name were the ones that did. That would be Arkansas, Vanderbilt. Now, Vanderbilt had a good year, but Vanderbilt wasn't expected to win that game. Georgia Tech was favored. And then, I have LSU. I guess you could throw them in there. Really, I would throw them in there only because Baylor was favored. I picked LSU to win. Don't come for me, LSU fans. But those teams took care of business. Arkansas, beats Texas Tech 39-26 and had it pretty much in hand for most of the game, or most of the second half, at least. And then Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, you can't keep that man down. 35-27 in a complete rainy mess in the Music City, in the Birmingham Bowl. And then there were others that you were expecting to uphold the SEC name that didn't and just kind of floundered. Alabama is the biggest one right there. I mean, I know a bunch of you are Ole Miss fans tuning in from Stephen Willis's Twitter. So, a lot of us were happy to see that. But honestly, I was just flabbergasted. I was slack-jawed for most of that game. I couldn't believe it. Michigan is up 16-0 before you can blink. Milroe's got a couple of turnovers. I think Michigan had like 70-something yards of total offense and 16 points. And before you knew it, it was 16-0, and Alabama was on their heels, and they never recovered. It was kind of wild to watch that. And I think too that Alabama fans will be excited to see Jalen Milroe go. And I think they like Jalen Milroe as a person. He showed many flashes that he could be a Heisman type of quarterback, that he could be the guy at Alabama, who goes down in the history books. Gets them on the cusp against Michigan right last year in the college football playoff. Brings them all the way back, and then on the cusp of a national championship appearance, and just isn't able to get it done. And then this year, you show flashes, right? You go up 28-0 against Georgia. You have this incredible pass to Ryan Williams that ends up winning you that game. It looks like you're well on your way, and then boom, fall to Vanderbilt. Boom, fall to OU near the end of the year. You struggle against South Carolina. You end up with 3 losses. And then, the Michigan game was completely futile. For those of you who watched that game, you saw those wide receivers after a bunch of these throws from Milroe. And it did rain early, in that game. It was pretty nasty, but then it was it was your typical Florida day, right, where you've got a rainstorm, and then in the afternoon, it clears up. It's like 20, 30 minutes. So by the second half, you're playing with mostly, dry balls, and he was throwing it all over the yard. Just he wasn't accurate. That was the big thing. He wasn't accurate. And you could see the receivers getting super frustrated with it. And I do think that Alabama fans, help me out in the chat if you think I'm wrong here, but I think they're ready to move on. And so I think that game really was the catalyst that Jalen Milroe declared for the NFL draft. I think he did that because his choices were NFL draft or transfer. And I think that Coach DeBoer probably came to him after that game and said, these are the options. We love you. We thank you for everything you did for Alabama. But we're going to move forward with one of our other quarterbacks coming into next year. And you're not going to be the guy, or you're going to have to compete for the job. And with that, Jalen Milroe then decides to declare for the NFL draft. So that was my biggest disappointment of the SEC bowl season, was Alabama. But then you also had others who we thought would uphold the SEC name better, especially Texas A&M. Those of you who watch this, you know that I'm an Aggie grad. You can see that Texas flag in the background. So we cover all the SEC, of course, and we try not to be biased, but we'll also tell it like it is with A&M, and sometimes we have a little bit of bias that comes in there. But on A&M should have upheld the SEC name. A&M should have beaten USC. USC was playing with all these players who were gone, the Branches who are now at Georgia. Zion Branch and his brother now transferred to Georgia. They did not play in this game. USC was without a ton of their production, while A&M was with most of their production. And they lose this game. And it wasn't even that they lost this game. It was that they completely collapsed. And Mike Elko, after the game, was furious about his defense. And he said, they asked him about the season and to just discuss a little bit about, what his thoughts were on it. And the only thing he said was, I'm just glad I won't have to watch this defense play another down and play like that. Next question. So you know that Mike Elko was not happy with the way Jay Bateman, the defensive coordinator, how the defense performed over the last, half of the year, the last 5 to 6 games, how they performed in that bowl game. And going into the year, if folks remember, and as an Aggie, I do, I was, watching a bunch of the Elko stuff. Mike Elko was talking about how that Aggie defense was going to be a strength of the team. He was excited about the transfer that they had in. He thought that potentially that defensive line was going to be extremely formidable and potentially even better and more talented than the defensive line in the previous year in 2023, which was going to be hard to do. And it just didn't end up that way. You had flashes again. Nick Scorton had a pretty good year. But across the board on the defensive line, you're getting gashed in the run game. They couldn't stop anybody, it seemed, at points in the last couple of games. Lenora Sellers runs all over you, right? Rocket Sanders runs all over you with South Carolina. Texas runs all over you. They just weren't able to stop them. And then that wasn't the only problem. The secondary, who also was supposed to be a strength, you get 5-star Des Ricks coming in from Alabama in the offseason. You get Will the Blanket Lee from Kansas State. Will Lee played very well for most of the year. Des Ricks, I mean, he looked pretty terrible, honestly, for a lot of the year, and he got gashed during that game. There was multiple other guys in the secondary who just didn't live up to the hype, who didn't play like Texas A&M fans thought they should play, and that was well on display there in Las Vegas in the Las Vegas Bowl against USC, where USC comes back from I think it was 24-7. At one point during that game, and A&M ends up losing that game 35-31. So really disappointing for Texas A&M to do that. I thought that they would win that game for obvious reasons. USC doesn't have anybody. Their production is all pretty much gone. And instead, that defense gives up, a bunch of touchdowns. I almost, I would have turned it off, I think, and gone to bed because I was on the East Coast. I was on East Coast time. Thankfully, I decided not to watch it, and I recorded it. I was going to get up in the morning and watch it, and I still did that because I'm a masochist, and I've I've been an A&M fan all my life, so I love the pain. The other one, too, finally, on SEC Bowls, and then we'll get to the college football playoff semis preview. South Carolina. What the hell, guys? What was that? I mean, look, Illinois is a pretty good team, and I was a little bit worried about them just because of Brett Bielema. Brett Bielema's a good coach. Arkansas fans, they ran him out eventually. I get it. You weren't happy with 8-4. Nobody should be. As an A&M fan, a Texas 8-4 fan, I'm well aware that I don't want 8-4 to be the standard. But Brett Bielema leaves and ends up at Illinois, and he's done a very good job there, and he's a good coach. And so that was one thing I was a little bit worried about. He can scheme pretty well. And at the end of the day, Lenora Sellers and that South Carolina team just didn't get it done. And they were the better team. Look, South Carolina on paper is a better team than Illinois, and they should have won that game, and they didn't. And the other thing is Illinois was without multiple top receivers as well as a couple of their top defenders. So they were playing hamstrung completely. I mean, South Carolina, I may be forgetting something, but I don't think South Carolina had, a bunch of guys out. Most of their team was playing, especially their hosses, their stars. So that one to me is honestly inexcusable. That's an inexcusable loss. Maybe Brett Bielema getting into the head of Shane Beamer by walking all the way over to the sideline and doing what the players were calling for after South Carolina ran that play on the kickoff. Maybe that got into Beamer's head, and maybe that caused him to lose a little momentum in that game. I don't know what it was, but I wanted to see South Carolina with Lenora Sellers and a lot of that production and everything coming back next year. I wanted to see that team get some momentum, right? Get a nice win. Get a win over number 20 Illinois. Shut Brett Bielema up, who loves to talk constantly, just always talking, right? Shut him up. And then get some momentum going into next year and say, hey, we're the Gamecocks. We're coming. This is the best team that we're going to have in Shane Beamer's era, and we should be ranked in the top 10 going into next year. And Lenora Sellers should be, a Heisman favorite. And instead, they lay an egg. They lay a dud. And Illinois stomps around on the field and, kind of embarrasses South Carolina, to be honest. And, a bunch of SEC chants and all that, of course, that you get at the end of the game. But But anyway, that one was inexcusable to me. So overall, though, SEC 6-4 in bowl season in non-college football playoff games. If you want to get into the college football playoff as well, we talked about that a little bit earlier. Look, Georgia losing, not great. Tennessee getting their doors blown off, not great. Hate to say it as an Aggie, but the Horns, don't screen cap that. The Horns, they're the last team standing in the SEC. And that's in their first year in the SEC. They walked right in. We'll never, ever hear the end of it. And if they win the national championship this year, I think I'm quitting for good. Don't hold me to that. But anyway, that's it for SEC bowl season. Quick little recap on that. Let's get into what we got going on. The two biggest games of the year thus far with the college football playoff semis, the first semifinal in the 12-team college football playoff that we're getting Thursday and Friday. Here is the bracket here. We got Notre Dame and Penn State in the Capital One Orange Bowl. That's on Thursday. It's at 7:30 on ESPN. And then we've got Ohio State and Texas in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl. That is on Friday at 7:30 on ESPN. We could be potentially experiencing some weather issues in Arlington. I haven't looked today, but they were suspected to be getting around like 7 to 10 inches of snow in Dallas, which is crazy. But anyway, it sounds like I watched Heather Dinich earlier in a clip from ESPN. There was talk about potentially flipping the days of the games in order to make it logistically easier, I think, for fans to get to the game, for the teams, for all of that. But it sounds like that's not going to happen. It sounds like they're going to keep the schedule. So we'll see. Look, I've lived in Texas for a lot of my life, and I know that folks in Texas cannot drive in the rain most of the time, let alone the snow. So we'll see if how that atmosphere is in Arlington for the Goodyear Cotton Bowl when these two teams match up. But I'm hopeful that a lot of fans will go. But if there's 8 to 10 inches of snow on the ground, we may have a situation where you got 10,000 fans in Jerry World. It might sound you might hear the echoes in Jerry World if they do get 8 to 10 inches of snow. So anyway, let's start here with Notre Dame and Penn State. I'm really interested to see. This could be a tale of two completely different styles of games, which would be a lot of fun to watch, right? You got Notre Dame and Penn State, who are both extremely physical teams. Notre Dame, while they're loosely aligned with the ACC, they really style themselves as a Big Ten team. And so, run the ball, pound the rock, play great defense, and be more physical than the other team. Punch them in the mouth. Penn State plays a similar brand of football. On the other side of the bracket, you got Ohio State and Texas, who are supposed to have extremely high-flying offenses. Now, some people forget they've got really good defenses. I don't think anyone is forgetting that Texas has a great defense this year. But for us SEC fans who don't watch as much Ohio State, and if you're like me, I try to watch as little Ohio State as possible because I frankly can't stand them. But both of these teams have great defenses. However, we have seen in recent weeks that for those teams, it kind of doesn't matter, right? Like their offenses are playing well enough to score. Now, Texas, the question for Texas is, to me, can they keep up with Ohio State? Ohio State has been playing at a level on the offensive side of the ball that we really haven't seen all year. And I don't think we can say that about Texas. Texas's defense is probably going to be the best defense I think that Ohio State has faced all year. So are they able to slow down this attack? They have gotten that receiving core, Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Wright. Those guys are heavily involved. They have been heavily involved in the last two games, and they have been tearing people up. And I'm interested to see now Texas, had some issues in the run game in particular against Arizona State, especially in that second half. They gave up a couple, decent pass plays, but the run game was the real issue. Ohio State, has two extremely good running backs. You got Travion Henderson and you got Quinshon Judkins, who Ole Miss fans know very well. That two-headed monster is pretty darn hard to stop. And the issue during this year for Ohio State, for the most part, especially in big games, has been the consistency of Will Howard. If Will Howard is consistent in this game, if he plays the way that he has played in the last two games in the college football playoff, I think Ohio State wins this game. And we'll see. That's a big question. Now, I think it says a lot that Vegas has Ohio State. I think it's 5.5-point favorite. I might have typoed that. I'm pretty sure that's right, but it's either 4.5 or 5.5. That is a big spread, and that tells you a lot. I think that tells you that basically exactly what I'm saying. Ohio State is going to need to, Texas. Texas is going to need to keep up with Ohio State. Texas's offense, people don't trust it. I don't trust it. Quinn Ewers, he's above average at this point. I think we know what we have with him. And sometimes he makes a throw where you're like, damn, that's why that guy was a 5-star. But it's few and far between. And there's dry spells, right? And Texas's offense just goes dry, and they got to rely on their defense to bail them out and get them back on the field. In this game where Ohio State is, I think, going to be wearing your defense out, you need to be able to maintain the ball. You need to be able to maintain possession. You need to be able to sustain drives. You need to be able to score points, field goals with Bert Auburn, who's been shaky at times later in the year. That's not going to cut it, I don't think, against this Ohio State team. You're going to have to put points on the board. So it's going to be a very, very interesting game. I'm really, really excited about this one. And then over on the other side with Notre Dame and Penn State, I think this one really is it's really, to me, about Drew Aller. We know what Notre Dame's going to do. We know exactly who Notre Dame is. We know they're going to pound the rock. We know that Riley Leonard is going to be a running threat as well. He's going to hit maybe a couple shots down the field, and then they're going to rely on their defense. And they want their defense to win them the game. It's going to be low scoring. If Notre Dame can keep it low scoring, that's where they want it. Penn State generally plays a similar game, but we know that that's what Notre Dame wants to do. Drew Aller has more intangibles, especially with his arm, than Riley Leonard does. And he started to show that late in the year. He started to show why he was that 5-star quarterback and why Penn State coveted him as their guy early in that recruiting cycle. And, with what he's done in the passing game from the Big Ten championship with Oregon all the way now up through the last two games of the college football playoff, he's shown that he can help. I'm not going to say he's going to win the game for Penn State with his arm, because Penn State also is going to pound the rock with Katron Allen and those hogs up front. They're going to try to establish the run as well. However, I think that's the X factor here is if Drew Aller can hit a couple of those shot plays, if Drew Aller can hit a big, touchdown for, say, 65 yards off a play action, right, or something like that, I think that gives Penn State the edge here. I'm not exactly sure who I'm going to pick yet. You can tune into SEC After Dark here. Again, if you guys watched us most of the season, if you're new here, you know that we make our picks on SEC After Dark, which comes up at the top of the hour, 9 o'clock Eastern. We'll join the crew and make our picks there. This show really is more about giving keys to the games and previewing the games and understanding kind of the layout of what it might look like going into these games. So I'm not going to make a pick here, but I do think that Drew Aller here is the key. Riley Leonard's not going to beat you with his arm. Drew Aller generally is not going to beat you with his arm, but he's got the edge in terms of talent, and he's been showing that he can make those throws, that he can make those plays when it matters. So we'll see how that goes. This is going to be an awesome game. It's going to be the tale of two different styles of play in these two different games. You're going to have Texas and Ohio State, who likely could be high flying. Vegas also thinks so. That's a 53.5-point over-under versus the Capital One Orange Bowl with Notre Dame and Penn State, who's just going to be physical, smash mouth, Big Ten style of football, run the ball down your throat, and try to make the other team bend to your will. And Vegas has that over-under set at 44.5. So that'll be real interesting to watch those games. I can't wait, guys. The college football playoff just has me jacked up. There's a line from a famous movie with Ryan Gosling, and I won't say the line, but I am jacked to the – you got it. You know what it's from, The Big Short, for those of you who know. All right. We've made it this far, everybody. That is all the topics I got for tonight. With Hammer, we might have been able to hit our normal hour, but as we had some technical difficulties at the start, don't have Hammer here. Here's Nick. Find this comment here. As a Michigan fan, I'm rooting for Texas to win the whole dang thing. All right. Good profile picture too, Nick. Interesting. All right. Good to hear that from a Michigan fan. Thanks for tuning in. All right. So that is it for our three main topics here tonight. We don't have a biscuit of the week this week. I didn't have time to get us a good one. I will say Kinfolk, ones that we highlighted a couple weeks ago, Kinfolk in Memphis. I just saw today on their Instagram, they're about to start selling their biscuits in a package in the front of their store in a freezer. I already told them that I want them to start shipping. If they start shipping, I'm going to buy 100 of them right away. So y'all go check that out. Kinfolk, you can check them out on Instagram. Look them up, Kinfolk Memphis. They have fantastic biscuits. Like I said, we discussed their biscuits and featured them a couple weeks ago. And looks like they may potentially start shipping biscuits if I can bully them into doing that. So check them out. But we do have a Muschamp Coach of the Week here. So I want to get into that. There was a couple that I thought we could discuss, and I almost gave the Coach of the Week. It wasn't even a coach, but I was just so amused by the Pop-Tart Bowl and the Pop-Tart guy doing this, and the Pop-Tart Bowl is fantastic. That is the best bowl going right now. They do an amazing job. With all their marketing and everything else, it's just a blast to watch. I don't even care who's playing. In fact, I wish we could do like one of those once a month with like a Pop Warner team and just have the Pop-Tart Bowl people do all the marketing for it, because hell, I would watch that if it was on ESPN. But the Muschamp Coach of the Week, I had two nominees that I wanted to put up. One of them won it. The other one didn't win it. The one who didn't win it was Lane Kiffin. I loved it. Love Lane, and just love the fact that he was still shilling after the win over a hapless Duke team who doesn't have their quarterback and who Ole Miss should have roundly and soundly beat it, and they did. But I loved it that even after the fact, he was talking about how we should have been in the playoff. And don't change, Coach. We love you for that. But Muschamp Coach of the Week, it goes to. I got to find it here. It goes to PJ Fleck. So check this out. All right, there is maybe more to say about this Muschamp Coach of the Week than there has been of any all season. But congrats to Coach Fleck, outside the SEC, Muschamp Coach of the Week this week. We checked out all of bowl season to try and find the best Muschamp Coach of the Week award winner, and this one, it goes to Coach Fleck up in Minnesota. But to set the scene, if you guys didn't watch the Duke's Mayo Bowl that was in Charlotte, it was a chilly night in Charlotte, and at the end of the game, when they're going to do the mayo and dump it all on PJ Fleck's shiny cue ball head, which I think they use as shine later. They just use the mayo for a little more shine on that dome. They took off the mascot. They had the Duke's Mayo Bowl mascot there. They had two, but one of them, they took it off, and it was Flava Flav, the rapper. And I don't know if you could see him in the background of that video. Go look it up again. You can find it on Twitter. Flava Flav is in the background. He's got his big old chain on with his big old clock, and he's one of the ones who's helping dump a whole bunch of mayo on PJ Fleck's head. love the fact that he also gets up and immediately hugs the Gophers mascot. That's fantastic. And then finally, it's not in that clip, but at the end, there was the reporter. You can see the reporter from ESPN is there. He's about to put the microphone in his face and ask him some questions, but PJ Fleck can't even see. He's got so much mayo on his head. Right after PJ Fleck gets the mayo out of his eyes, he's talking to the ESPN reporter. And before the ESPN reporter can ask him a question that he can answer, he just hugs the ESPN reporter, gets mayo all over this dude, who was not expecting that, not planning to get mayo everywhere. But that's why you just got to love college football. In no other sport will you ever see something like that. And just an absolute blast. And so congratulations to Coach PJ Fleck on winning the Muschamp Coach of the Week award for bowl season. You embodied what Coach Muschamp is about, which is loving your team, loving your players, and absolutely loving college football and doing whatever it takes to get a win, and then also even willing to humiliate yourself in order to have some fun and enjoy it. So congratulations to Coach Fleck. That will do it for us tonight. Sorry that we didn't have Hammer on here. We will figure out his technical difficulties soon. He is actually moving to Colorado next week, so he will have internet back. I hope that his internet there works better than his internet works at our home in Virginia. But that'll do it for us. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. We are Biscuits and SEC Live. We are live every Wednesday on Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. And we will be on in maybe Hammer's internet will work for SEC After Dark. We'll see. Might just be me and the rest of the crew. But that will be on here in about a little over half an hour. We're going to be on at 9 o'clock Eastern. So tune into SEC After Dark on the SEC After Dark channels. You can find that on Stephen Willis's Twitter as well as the SEC After Dark YouTube page. And it'll also be on our Biscuits and SEC Twitter page as well. So be sure to check those out. Make sure also one final overture on our newsletter. Sign up for the Biscuits and SEC.com or sign up for the Biscuits and SEC newsletter, the Morning Biscuits newsletter at biscuitsandsec.com/newsletter. We also have the links in our bio in all of our social media channels. So be sure to check that out. It's free. All the happenings around the SEC, everything you need to know, the little news and nuggets on Mondays and Fridays. So we hope you'll sign up for that and follow along as we cover the SEC because we love it. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you in a couple minutes for SEC After Dark.